Well, hello, friends, and welcome once again to another episode of the 360 Experience Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Braheem, and you're in for a treat today. I'm going to be bringing a young man into the show that has become a friend of mine, somebody who I absolutely admire and revere. He's such a bright 31-year-old young businessman in the mortgage space. His name is Andrei Paduraru. Now I have to hypothetically say that. I had to actually call him. I've known him for a year. I'm like, bro, I need you to teach me how to pronounce your last name. Paduraru. That's how it's pronounced. I said it a little bit faster there. Andrei works for a company that I'm very familiar with called JVM Lending in Northern California. The owners of his company, Jay Voorhees and Heejin, are friends of mine, people that I've known for a long time who I deeply respect. They hired Andrei at a very young age, at the age of 23, basically fresh out of college, although he held a job with Apple for a short period of time. And their training program, the way that they bring people off the street up to speed and get them to a place of being able to move the needle in the mortgage business is something very exciting, and you're all going to want to hear about. We're going to talk about offshoring, which they've been doing for years, and how to leverage personal assistants in the mortgage business. We're going to be talking about tech stack. Andrei is a bright young man when it comes to technology, and we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and some of the things that they're doing to really scale their business. It's a very unique business model. It's one that's going to open your eyes and make you think a little bit differently. And I am certain that you're going to get a lot of value from this. Now, before we get to my conversation with Andrei, I just want to say thank you for being a listener. And if you're a subscriber, thank you again. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. The more people that we have subscribing, the better it is for everybody involved, including you, because I can get great guests like Andrei on the show. And without further ado, friends, my conversation with Andrei Paduraru and the 360 Experience. Andrei, what's going on, bro? Good to be with you.
Been a good start to the summer so far. I've been enjoying it. How about yourself?
Can't complain, man. Down here in Costa Rica, doing this recording from down here. You know the vibe down here. It's pretty nice. I just got here on Sunday and super excited to spend some time with you. I think that the first place that I want to explore is just kind of the nature. There's a lot of uniqueness about you that I think is noteworthy that I want to unpack. So the first thing is, let's talk about like your age, how long you've been in the business for, and how you got into the mortgage industry, especially with the uniqueness of the JVM model.
Yeah, so I am 31 years old. I've been with JVM, which is technically the only mortgage bank I've been with my whole career. So it's going to be 8 years with JVM in January. And actually, I got started in this industry in a little bit of a unique way, kind of running the other direction. So I come from a family of real estate professionals, if you will. So my dad's a realtor. My brother was a realtor. My mom was a lender. Now she's a broker. So when I was finishing up high school, my dad was like, well, you have to join the family business. That's the only path forward. And so I got my real estate license at that point, but I didn't feel like it was the right fit for me to go into that business. And I ran the other direction, going to college instead, got a degree in finance and kind of bounced around. Post-college, I landed like what I thought was the dream job, which was working at Apple on their finance team. So I was like, okay, great company, cool. They have wonderful benefits and all these awesome things. But I really hated the work. It was corporate finance. It was doing a lot of like accounts payable and kind of accounting type work, very, bean counter type stuff. And it was a far commute. So that was a little bit exhausting. And then after a few months there, I was hoping to get converted to like a full-time position because this was on a contracted type basis. And they were like, well, we'll extend you. We don't have anything permanent. And around that time, a recruiter found me for LinkedIn on LinkedIn and said, hey, there's this opportunity for you where it's, aligns with your real estate license that you've never actually used. It's finance related, but it's not a loan officer position. You're part of this like mortgage team. And I was like, all right, that seems interesting enough. Let's see what this is all about. And then that was JVM, and I've been there ever since.
And what's your current role at JVM Lending?
So I am currently a senior manager, meaning that I work closely with Jay and Heejin, and I oversee a few teams specifically on the sales, marketing, and client outbound side of things. So more sales and a little bit of operations, but more focused on that sales and marketing.
Okay. And you actually do engage with customers that are interested in borrowing money, correct?
Yes. So I still have the occasional. I had a call this morning with a client. I tend to funnel most of those discussions over to our client advisor team, and get them directly in contact with somebody on that team. Just because it's a better experience. They're faster and generally more available to answer clients versus myself, where I'll be more engaged in management activities in the day to day. But I'd say it's probably like 25%, 30% of my day still revolves around engaging clients and pitching products, pitching ideas, things like that.
Cool. So I know the background of JVM, but I think it's an interesting story that you could articulate better than me. So it's not JVM's not a traditional mortgage banking operation in the way that it's structured, is it? And there's
Mm-hmm.
a whole hierarchy to how you guys do things. And I'd like you to maybe give us a background as to how JVM differs from the traditional mortgage banking operation.
Yeah. So our biggest difference is that we have no loan officers. And that's you can go to jvmlending.com, go to about, or, in our about section. And that's one of our main drop downs is our no loan officer model. So what we realized as a structure was a deficiency in the way things are done traditionally. The loan officer wears a ton of hats, right? They're out in the field meeting new realtors. Then they get referrals from those realtors and they have to talk to those clients, then get the pre-approval started, then help them shop, contract, lock, close. They're doing it all. And it can be a little overwhelming and inconsistent from time to time where they get flooded with contracts. They're neglecting the agents out in the field. When they're, slow with contracts, they're out in the field and not necessarily working their pre-approval pipeline. So there's these opportunities where, because of the nature of the job, you're not always at like maximum leverage for each position. So Jay and Heejin, when they set up the company, I think about 15 years ago, when they first came up with this structure, they basically chunked up the loan officer position into different specialties. So we have our business development team that's permanently out in the field, meeting new agents, educating them about how JVM operates, and getting them excited to work with us and send us referrals. When those referrals come in, we send them to our client advisor team. They are the ones that are, jokingly chained to the desk all day and talking to new clients, qualifying them, getting new apps in. That client then moves over to our pre-approval team, who pre-approves them and gets them ready to shop. Once they find the right property, we have a short stop at contract desk. It does a really quick sweep and gets the file ready for underwriting. And then our closing specialist team takes it home from submission to funding. And so each of those steps, you have these experts that take the baton and run with it and make sure that whatever they're doing, that's where they're investing all of their time. So yes, there's overlap here and there, but 99% of the time, what the pre-approval team is doing is learning about products, making sure we're pitching the best solution and getting people approved for their best possible option. And then relaying that back, of course, to the client and the realtor and helping them find the right home. At the BDO side, they're never talking to clients. They're never looking at contracts. They're just focused on where's the next agent, where's the next big opportunity, and how do we find more clients to bring into the funnel. And so because of that, we can kind of leverage ourselves and through economies of scale, do more and more volume where we have every single person that's dedicated to their role specifically. And you lose some of that. You don't have the juggling multiple balls or having to code switch or switch gears rather from I'm out in the field selling. Now I'm in the office pre-approving. It's just one thing all day, every day.
So give us an idea as to how much volume you guys do. I mean, here we are at the very beginning of July, so we have 6 months to take a look at. What's 2025 looked like from a volume and units perspective?
Yeah, 2025 has been good to us. We had our busiest Q2 in a very long time. And so we just closed at about 34 million for June, and it was 34, 36, 39 going back to this quarter. So a little bit of a decline month over month since May, but still in the high 30s. So I guess for all of 2025, we've been sitting at around a little less than 200 million for the year so far.
Now, a traditional IMB or even a mortgage broker is going to look at those numbers and then they're going to wonder, well, how many people do you have doing that volume? What do those people make? So from a
Mm-hmm.
profitability perspective, maybe you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so comp varies by position. The more sales oriented your role is, obviously you have more potential for upside and bringing the business. I think if we break it down, our comp falls in broadly into two categories, where one is going to be stateside and overseas. So I'm going to just briefly talk about the overseas team because that's what really helps us stay profitable. We've outsourced a lot of our functions to overseas teammates, virtual assistants in the Philippines. And so they do a lot of the clerical things, the traditional LOA roles, insurance, appraisals, et cetera. We have probably about 30 or 40 people overseas that are helping support those roles. And that's roughly about 2,000, give or take, per month per employee overseas. Stateside, we have about 25 people, and their roles are essentially base plus bonus. So our goal is to get everyone over, the 100,000 marks. And really, if we look at a year to date, it'd be on the low end, like 110, 115. And then on the high end, probably like a top sales person would be earning around like the 200 to 220 range. So that's kind of the range of pay based on role, but it does vary, of course, on productivity and everything like that.
Yeah, but if you're doing, say, 350 million in annualized production and you're averaging 150 to 200 basis points profit on that, there's plenty of room to compensate for the overhead that you just articulated. So let's talk about the overseas stuff. I mean, that was one of the areas that I wanted to take this conversation, and you took us there. So let's just deepen that. When did you guys start using virtual assistants? That's number one. Number two is, I think that most people get really worried when it comes to, letting go of control and sending, the loan file or elements of the loan file to an offshore entity, especially when it comes to communicating with the borrowers in any type of verbal way with accents and all that kind of stuff. Give us an idea as to how that's been for you guys. What's the process for getting these people integrated onto your team, and what kind of roles do they fulfill? I mean, you kind of shared that a little bit with the LOA thing, but maybe you could go a little deeper.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a learning experience for us. I think our first virtual hire was about 6 or 7 years ago. So right around the time when I was hired was when we first started experimenting with overseas support, maybe about a year in. So 6 years at this point from the very first one. And frankly, it was a lot of learning through experience and trial and error, seeing what worked and what didn't work. Where we found the most success is pairing up the overseas team member with somebody stateside, or pairing a stateside person with up to 2 or even 3 assistants that they oversee and manage. That's going to ensure a high degree of quality, a fast feedback loop for fixing errors or for stepping in if something gets done incorrectly. And that's currently the structure we have today. Essentially, you'll have whatever stateside position they have their overseas people that they delegate to. That provides for some flexibility for immediateness, where, if I tell my assistant, hey, I need you to work on this project or prioritize these things, they can immediately do that for us. We also have paired it up where another thing that we've learned to be successful with is making sure our assistants work on the same time zone as us. Some overseas operations will sell that, hey, we're working when you're sleeping, right, as an upside. We found that doesn't necessarily work for our type of workflow, because that becomes a little bit more of like an underwriting relationship. I package up my requests, I ship it somewhere, and then a day later I get an answer. But if I realize that I made a mistake on my packaging, right, I didn't explain something clearly enough, then I'm losing a day every single time I need to go back and re-explain. So we found having assistants that work in our time zone is the most effective. So anyway, over the 6 years, those are the things, some of the things we've learned in terms of what work they take on. We're not quite to the point where most are communicating with clients, for the most part, at least verbally over the phone, because the accents are, a real challenge. And we think that there's a little bit of a aversion to that when a client picks up the phone and they feel like, hey, I'm not getting somebody in the States, what's going on here? So for the most part, we filter for employees that have really strong writing capabilities. And we also, of course, leverage AI tools to make sure that their writing is on par. So they'd be drafting up emails, needs lists, scenarios, getting things prepped. So then the mortgage analyst or the closing specialist or whomever is actually owning that file or that step of the process is going to put eyes on what's happening. But I'll say probably 9 times out of 10, it's like, okay, cool, everything looks good, hit send. Where the email's drafted perfectly, the needs are explained, the reason we need a signature on the 4506T is well written out. And so you get to that point over a lot of repetition and having somebody that works alongside you and kind of learns how you say things, how you do things, and can for better or worse mimic what you're doing. And if they send an email, if my assistant sends an email as Andrei, my hope is that the recipient on the other side can't tell that my assistant drafted it. So just at a high level, that's essentially how we're pairing people up with their virtual assistants and getting them to that level of productivity.
So I know, because of my relationship with Jay and Heejin, that one of the things that was developed many years ago, to a degree that I've never seen before in terms of excellence, frankly, was your training system. So the structure that you're describing, which I want to get into hiring too, so maybe we can couple these two. I hate to be throwing so many things at you, but they hired you off the street, as a college graduate. I happen to know the answers to some of these questions I'm asking, but I want the listener to hear them in terms of, what your process is for hiring, and then what your process is for onboarding and training. Because one of the questions that I get asked a lot by originators is, when they go to hire somebody as a team member, is it better to hire somebody with experience, or is it better to hire somebody that has no experience and to train them? And my answer is always, well, it just depends upon whether you have some type of a training structure that would allow for that person to be, properly supported and to be able to be valuable to you. So maybe you could speak to the hiring process and the training process and give us a little bit of a teaser on that.
Yeah. So the hiring process is slow. There's a phrase that we follow, just hire slow, fire fast. And so you want to be really careful with your hires and be really picky. So what we look for generally, we have a really high standard, especially for stateside. So, we're looking for college graduates with high GPAs, generally 3.5 or higher. Preferably, they would have played a sport or had some sort of other thing that they were doing outside of school. So either really involved in clubs or sports or working full time while also going to school full time, sure they can manage their time and balance those things. And then similar goes to the overseas team, right? We're looking at carefully crafted resumes. For the stateside folks, we tend to look for experience because there's already the language barrier to get over. And generally, if they have a background in customer support in the hotel industry, not enough of that translates over to mortgage. So if they've already had experience in the mortgage world, it makes it easier for them to pick up on terminology and lingo and things like that. And generally for those roles, it's not as much of a detriment. On the stateside, when we're bringing someone into our team, we want no mortgage experience.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think you made a misstatement that I want to clarify. So you just described somebody in the hotel industry doesn't necessarily translate to the mortgage industry, and hopefully they've had some mortgage experience. But what I think you said was, for the stateside people, we want them to have mortgage experience. But I believe you meant for the offshore people, you want them to have mortgage experience. Is that correct?
Yes. Sorry, I misspoke there. Yes.
No problem. I just want to make sure that there's clarity here. Keep going.
Yeah. So for the offshore team, ideally they have some mortgage experience. For the onshore team, we want them to come in with no experience. And the reason for that with the stateside team is that we find that people with experience in the industry might have bad habits that we would have to help them unlearn. And we've dabbled with industry hires before, and it's really hard for people to let go of those habits that don't fit into our system. Right. For the most part, there's no roadmap on how to be a loan officer, and people kind of just figure it out and do it their way. And for some it works, for others it doesn't. But then having them unlearn some of those things is difficult to get them to be part of an ecosystem here. So that's the hiring process. Experience, no experience, depending on where they're focused. Then things tend to converge. When we're vetting the candidates, we will always go through a process of having them do an assessment test. We've developed a long 60-minute test where it's essentially, logic questions, brain teasers, basic math, things that are going to help suss out, one, time management capabilities. Can they handle a task that feels overwhelming and has a strict deadline? And two, what's their ability to think on their feet? Some of these questions are oddball and are going to catch you off guard, and that's kind of the point. If they do well in the assessment,
give us an example of one of those oddball questions.
If you look out the window and you see a white bear, where are you?
Okay.
South Pole, right? You got to be, if you're looking to see a white bear, polar bear, or I guess North Pole. It's been so long since I've done this assessment. It's been now I'm like tripping on my own questions.
What's the purpose of that question, though?
We want to interrupt like the typical pattern of thoughts and like kind of make you stumble a little bit and have to slow down to answer these questions thoughtfully. And it's not about necessarily the right answers, because some of these are describe your favorite season and why, right? But do you have the ability to think through, to read carefully, comprehend, and then put together a coherent response that can pass, that can be legible by the reader on the other side? And can you do it quickly, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes people will get there with all the time in the world, but that's not a luxury in our industry. And we want to make sure people have those strong written skills and verbal skills.
That's brilliant. I love that. Okay, keep going. Sorry, I interrupted your flow there. You're talking about were you complete with the hiring process? Well, actually, on the hiring process, how many interviews? Mm-hmm. And you run a credit report too, don't you?
Yes, for stateside, we look at credit. We look at the assessment. We also do DISC assessments too. So that's very important. Different positions that we hire for. Obviously, we want to make sure the DISC matches. So for example, I'm a 98D and a 99I and a 2S and a 2C. So I would not be the ideal candidate for a processor, right? Because it would be my living nightmare to be that detail oriented. So we want to make sure that we're matching people up based on that. The credit report also shows just responsibility and ability to handle things. And if we're going to trust you with a lot of money, we want to make sure you're capable of handling your own. Interview process is generally 2 to 3. So it'll go phone screen, assessment. If they do well on that, disc test, then or disc assessment, and then their first interview. Past that, then second round interview. And there might be a third depending on how they do, but generally we're going to do two face-to-face.
And you have different people interview them?
Yes. So it's always a panel interview. The first is usually based on availability for the first round interview, and we'll get people even from that are not at senior management level. So this will be interviews from their peers as well. So we'll have usually a manager and up to 2 peers from the mortgage analyst team, for example, just so they can see, hey, who are we bringing in? Who do I have to mesh with? Are there any red flags that I notice? There's also we want to make sure we're weeding out any sort of like Dunning-Kruger, overly ambitious but not capable personality types, for people that come in and are ready for I'm trying to climb the corporate ladder and be the boss, but that's wonderful to have that ambition, but we're not hiring for the boss right now. We need you to do this work, right? So we want to make sure that they'll be able to mesh in and actually achieve what we need them to achieve. And then the second round interview will generally be with senior level management, right? So, hey, they passed the first round. Let's make sure that there aren't any other red flags before we move them forward.
Cool. Okay. So then they start, and by the way, I didn't hear you, and it's probably because you're hiring younger people that maybe are out of college recently, et cetera, but I didn't hear anything about like checking references and stuff like that. How important is that to you?
That is something we check. So it's not something that I would do personally, but our onboarding team would call those references and make sure that there aren't any red flags or if anything seems suspicious. But we do tend to hire from straight out of college. So for the most part, the references are, professors or odd jobs here and there.
Cool. Okay. Now they start and they've never done a loan before. They've never been in the mortgage business. Most of them probably don't even have a mortgage of their own because they're fresh out of college. How do you get people like that up to speed quickly and to be valuable to you?
Yeah. So it's a mix of a really comprehensive book learning program. So from when I've started, we've been constantly improving and kaizening this training program to be as good as it can be. And so it's about 30 days of head down book studying. In that 30 days, we also want you to start studying for the NMLS test because no industry experience, they haven't done the NMLS yet. And by day 60, they need to have passed their NMLS on their first try. We don't do redos. And we make that very clear from the beginning that if you don't take this seriously and you don't pass the first time, that is the end of your tenure with JVM. So during those first 30 days, it's very heavy book learning. And we're having them slowly dip their feet in, things like file stacking, understanding what pay stubs look like, W-2s, tax returns, all those basic things. And then the ramp kind of happens that after day 30 and day 60 to 90, they're slowly taking files, not directly client facing, but they'll be slowly taking files and doing that work and having it reviewed by a senior on their team. So they'll be paired up with a mortgage analyst that's going to be reviewing what they're doing, making sure that, hey, your income calculations are correct, or you missed this guideline, you missed that guideline. And so slowly, they're going to be basically drafting and doing the back end work to be reviewed by somebody later and providing that feedback for about 2 to 3 months. Then at the 90-day mark, they should be ready to start taking files in their name, but we're going to cherry pick a little bit and give them the, hey, here's a nice W-2 borrower with perfect credit, nothing too crazy. And then we slowly start ratcheting them up to more complex files, the jumbos, the messy, manual underwrites and things like that.
So, I mean, first of all, for those listening, I mean, that's probably a lot more comprehensive than anything that you've ever done would be my guess. And this is why JVM is such a successful company, because they hire correctly. They take the time, as Andrei said, to really vet out a prospect. And then more important than even the vetting process is to train them properly. Because when you think about it, it's like if you invest those 120 days or whatever it is to hire correctly and then train properly, now you have somebody on your team that is certainly capable of moving the needle in a big way and is armed and dangerous to be successful and take you to the next level. And this is why this company does so much volume. Now, Andrei mentioned as well about the traditional loan officer role doesn't have a lot of training and support to get them to a level of expertise. And this is why you have loan originators that are kind of only, half capable, let's just say, of performing their job at a high level. Okay. So actually, before we go to AI and tech, because that's where I want to end up our time, because I think it's an area that is in your wheelhouse in a lot of ways. I do actually want to cover one other area, the biz dev part. So, what we've kind of covered so far is the hiring and training of the offshore and onshore support staff, but we didn't really necessarily tackle the onshore biz dev people. So they are the bread and butter of your organization in many ways. I mean, a lot of your business comes from realtors and from the blog that your company does. Tell us a little bit about the biz dev part and what you think you guys do really well to make you so successful in generating a lot of leads.
Yeah. That's a great question. It's so biz dev is always the moving target, right? You feel like you figure something out and then the market changes and you have to respond to it. So it's a part that I really enjoy being a part of, because you're constantly having to think of something new and exciting. So our strategy has really taken off, frankly, this year, when we've gotten better about aligning our biz dev and our marketing. And I know those are generally two different departments. And it sometimes feels like biz dev is selling one thing out in the field, and then marketing is like sending emails or doing whatever about something completely different. So one thing that we've actually been working a lot on is aligning all of those messages. So from our blogs to what we're saying when we're dialing realtors, to what we're emailing our database about, to what we're pitching the clients, we have one cohesive voice, and we make sure that we're touching on things. Because if there's ever any a drop ball where, let's say we're promoting a new program, we've got a pretty big system built out, right? So if realtor heard about this program from an email, but never heard about it from the biz dev person, but sent the clients that wanted it, how is the client advisor team or the pre-approval team supposed to know that, hey, this client doesn't care about the fixed rate, FHA, they want a DSCR loan, right? It's mixed messaging. So I think the biggest opportunity is aligning messaging across the board. And so the way we do that, we'll essentially go through and market to agents based on what their listings. We approach a lot of listing agents and properties and try and incept the idea of, hey, here's how you could sell this, and here's how I would pitch it to a buyer. And we do that through our marketing flyers and materials that we provide for free. So we reach out and say, for example, there's a program we have for buying before you sell. It's a flat fee of $1,000. Lets your seller buy their new property and then sell their old one 6 months later. So it's extremely affordable, and it's going to help you get 2 sales out of it. So we will approach the realtor and say, hey, I noticed this home's been on the market for a while. You've been active contingent. How do we get this thing from pending to sold? Here's a solution for it. Let me co-brand it with you so you get the credit for it. And why don't you pitch this to the other party and see if they bite? Maybe this will get the needle moving. So that's essentially how we've aligned, the biz dev folks that are out in the field pitching the solutions with a marketing team that's going to actually be making the materials and spinning up the solutions to our client team, who now is going to get a package loan saying, oh, cool, I see I have a pending sale here. I need to get this contingent offer turned into a buy before you sell deal. Done. I know exactly what to do. So to give you the idea of like how we've aligned those three things, day to day for the biz dev, I know I'm going deep with this, so I apologize if I'm going too off script.
It's fantastic. Keep going.
So the biz dev day to day, it's mostly out in the field. You're going to be going on broker tours. You're going to be going to marketing meetings, office meetings. You're going to be meeting agents as often and as frequently as you can. Usually we try to structure that in the morning, so you're getting the out in the field stuff when people are early or out and early. So like broker tours generally happen from like 10 to 1 or 10 to 12 in our area. And then the afternoon, it's going to be a lot of follow-up. So touching base with all the realtors that have sent us referrals, have pre-approvals in the pipeline, have locked clients or have closed. So taking care of that, the people that are already in our camp per se. And then the other half of the day, or the other half of the time you're in the office, is going to be outbound dials. So prospecting for new business, following up on leads, which are either agents that we've worked with on the listing side and saying, hey, I noticed, back to what I was just saying earlier, hey, realtor, I know we just closed 123 Main Street with you. I see that you have this other property, in the next town over that's still on the market. Here's some ideas of how we've helped close similar properties like that. Would you like some materials that we can help promote and market for you? So that's kind of the day-to-day for the biz dev side. And the thing that really unlocked it for us is that we focus so much on our value props as a company. So as a biz dev person, I'm never saying, hey, you need to send me the business because I'm going to move heaven and earth to make it happen. It's my team that's doing all of this. And so that's how we can decouple ourselves and get, leads shoved into the JVM funnel, because they're not saying, oh, you have to talk to Andrei, you have to talk to Andrei or Aaron or whomever on our biz dev team. If you look up some of our biz dev folks, they've closed 0 loans in their name because nobody's sending the clients to them. They're sending them to JVM because what we're selling is this machine that can close their loans and make their clients really, really happy. We're not selling ourselves.
Your biz dev people are paid a base plus commissions on anything that they generate. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's a flat per file bonus that scales up based on production.
And did I hear you correctly in saying that a part of their role is also to call on leads that have not converted? Is that right?
I should have clarified realtor leads. So meaning cold realtors or circle prospecting in office that they did a presentation in or something like that.
And how many, approximately on an average basis, how many leads a month are you guys getting right now from all these sources?
Between 450 to 550, depending on the month.
Wow. 450 to 550 warm referrals, I presume?
That would be total for all lead sources. Warm would be about 350. So about 75% of our referrals are from realtors that are referring to their clients.
It's incredible. And how many real estate agents do you guys partner with or that send you business on any kind of a consistent basis?
As many as would like to send us business. So please, there's no limit. I think we had about 1,200 agents with whom we worked last year.
Wow. Yeah. And obviously for the listeners, this is an evolutionary process. I mean, it started much smaller than that, and you had 20, 30 realtors, and then you just continued to scale the system. Now you guys also do a lot, at least that you used to. Do you still do a lot of wining and dining? Do you have like cocktail hours and stuff like that for your realtor partners?
We've actually slowed that down a little bit, and that's something that I'd like to bring back. The wining and dining we've pulled back on around COVID time, and it just never started up. It feels like it always felt like the wrong time to try and get a group meeting together or a group event scheduled, but now is probably about the time to wind that up again. What we've been doing a lot more of is client appreciation events. And actually, this is an idea that I took from Ashley McKenzie Sharp, who's the queen of this. And I was like, yeah, why are we not doing more client appreciation events with our realtors? Because then it's killing two birds with one stone. We're seeing their team and we're meeting their agents, and we're getting in front of the clients. So we've put our attention in that direction.
Cool. Let's talk tech. You're in the Silicon Valley area. You're a young generation guy. I've heard you within my Leadership 360 program talk about technology and do a wonderful job of teaching it. I'll let you pick which one you want to tackle first, but the questions are as follows. What's your tech stack that you think makes a great impact on your business model, and why? And then the second question, it could be taken in reverse order, is how are you utilizing AI effectively to originate and facilitate loans? Maybe you could share a little bit on both.
Yeah. I'll start with tech stack because that's near and dear to my heart. I played a role in helping get a lot of these solutions up and running. I'm certainly not the tech guy, but essentially my role was kind of the in the trenches, testing it out, seeing what worked, and giving feedback to the tech folks that would actually tweak and make it better. So the first is our CRM. We custom built our own version of Salesforce, which I will say has been a game changer. It's probably one of the most powerful CRMs out there because of the capabilities it has to integrate with so many external systems. You can pretty much, if you can dream it, you can build it with Salesforce, but for a price. So if I was to give it a downside, it's costly to build, costly to maintain, costly to run, but it can do a lot for you. So we've been really happy with that. So for example, some things that we've done with our Salesforce instance that have been game changing. We are running all of our refinance quotes for past clients. We're basically automatically pricing those out every day. And soon enough, with the help of AI, so I'll get into that later, we're actually going to build the quotes themselves and send the emails automatically to clients when they meet the parameters for qualification. So, like I said, if you can dream it, you can build it. And Salesforce is an amazing backbone for that. It takes a lot of effort to get it dialed in. And this has been a labor of love for about 6 years that we continuously tweak and make improvements and make changes. So that's probably the number one thing in our tech stack we couldn't live without. And unfortunately, Salesforce knows that. So when renewal time comes, they don't take it easy on us. The second thing that is a game changer, and specifically for how we work, is a email application called Front. So frontapp.com. It is not an email platform like Gmail or Outlook is. So we still use Outlook as like the sender, if you will. Front is like a skin that you plug everything into. And so what has changed, why that radically changed our business is because of the way that we work in a team-based environment. There can be a lot of threads and communication can get messy. So when I started at JVM, one of my jobs was I was the client advisor, lead taker person. And my day-to-day job, in addition to just answering the phones, was watching our JVM team inbox. It would get probably about 1,200 to 1,500 emails a day. And my job was assigning it to the right person or filtering out the spam or, doing all that stuff. And it was a full-time job. That thing was exhausting. So with Front,
really inspiring job. I'm sure you had a great time with that. Thank God you got promoted out of that position. Good job.
You can see why I so desperately wanted to fix that problem for selfish reasons.
Totally.
Yeah. And so the way it was set up was JVM team was a distribution list. So basically everyone would get the same copy of that email. So, 1,500 emails would be multiplied by 20 employees because everyone's just seeing that. So Our servers would get overloaded to be a mess. Anyway, the thing that front does that's very unique is all these inboxes are now shared. So it's one copy of the email that's assigned to the one person handling it, but there's visibility to the people who need it. So for example, if a pre-approval letter request or a pre-approval request comes in, a new client is reaching out wanting a pre-approval, I can tag in the comments my assistant and say, hey, can you start, can you put them in Salesforce and get them logged and attach the right realtor? Boom, my assistant's already working on that. Hey, pre-approval team, can you put together this scenario at $1 million or 20% down, 800 credit? Boom, they're working on it, and they can actually build the email drafts that I can see. And we're all collaborating in this thread that's related to the one client request. So basically your emails become a repository for those clients, and everyone has the full context. I'm not going to Salesforce to check some notes. I'm not going to my Teams. I'm not going to my text messages. It builds it all in one. And it actually even got better recently because our phone system now plugs into it. So text message threads between myself and clients, I can tag people in and they can see the full context, right? So if we're texting about different scenarios, different addresses, whatever, great. Hey, build me these scenarios. And I don't have to specify because they can just read all the context above. So I love the front app. It's, it truly is one of the things that I think helps us do the volume we do. And actually one last thing that I'll brag about with it.
I have a question about that. So Front is the name of the app for people to check out. But what I'm not clear on, and this is probably just my ignorance, is how does that cut down on the number of emails that you need to look at?
There's no duplication of emails that are team related. So if, for example, back to the old way of doing it, where if you have a team distribution inbox, let's say, she sends it to the JVM team. So Andrei has a copy, Tim has a copy of that email, and you're not sure, did I handle it? Did you handle it? So in this case, there's only one email that both Andrei and Tim can see. So if you respond to it, it gets removed from my to-do list. So I'm like, oh, Tim already sent it. Boom, it's done. It's archived. I don't have anything else to handle about it. Or Tim can say, hey, Andrei, this is actually for you. You assign it to me. Now it's cleared from your plate and it's in my court to handle. So it's one email getting assigned to one person to handle rather than multiple copies that then there has to be like a manual process to reconcile and say, hey, did somebody reach out to the agent? Okay, did somebody reach out to the borrower? Okay, right. I'll archive my copy.
Yeah, if nothing else, what I'm hearing you say, it cuts down the communication internally between you and 4 other people as to who's going to take this, versus you can see if somebody took it because it creates one continuous thread. Is that right?
Exactly. Cool. And underneath each email, there's comments that are happening internally. So if there's any discussion that needs to happen about it, people can chatter back and forth and say, oh, actually, Tim, do you mind stepping in for me because of X, Y, and Z reason? And that happens instantaneously.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Anything else that you can think of from a tech stack perspective that would be valuable for the listeners to know about?
Last but not least is our POS blend. It's, it's the best one we've used so far. It does a lot of the follow-up, and the conversion rates are really strong. So that's probably another one that we love. I could go in depth about it, but I would say that they're still the leader in my mind, but there's a lot of competitors that are catching up to them. So I'm curious to see if they stay ahead, but so far they've still been the best from what I've seen.
Okay. What about artificial intelligence? What are you seeing? Where do you think it's going? What creative ideas do you have on how to leverage it more effectively in the origination space or the facilitation of loan space?
I think eventually all of the operation backend of our jobs will be mostly AI, if not completely AI. And so the main part that people will pay us for, the reason that they want to work with somebody, is for that consultative expertise that we can provide. So I think eventually the days of running numbers and DTI and et cetera is just going to be completely taken off of our plates. And it's going to be discussing the whys of this loan path, or the why we're structuring this way, or why we're approaching the problem the way we are. For example, I see it as an extension of like our virtual team in a sense, where our virtual assistants are basically getting supercharged today because of their use of AI. So even if they don't have the strongest writing skills, they can bang out a polished, beautiful email by having it run through ChatGPT or Gemini or whoever they like to clean up some of the grammar, clean up some of the things that maybe they're not as certain about. Eventually it's going to get better at math. I think that's one of the weaknesses right now with AI is a lot of the models aren't very strong in math. That's just a matter of time. And I think eventually they're going to get incorporated more and more into underwriting. Instead of having underwriters manually check all these things, there's no reason a model can't pull all these data points together and issue a decision, yes or no, almost instantaneously. So I see it as speeding up a process, simplifying the technical number crunching, and then really leaning heavy onto that advising and value adding and being a consultant really for why somebody should take loan X over loan Y.
But I'm going to play contrarian just for healthy conversation here.
Sure.
What prevents AI from even taking over the role of providing the consultative approach and describing different scenarios and the pros and cons, et cetera? I mean, today I was researching a hotel for a vacation that Liz and I were going to take, and there's certain things that I'm looking for and that are important to me. So I just asked Chat to research these 4 hotels and break them down in terms of the needs and wants and desires that I have. And it came back with a pretty detailed response as to here's the pros and cons. And based upon what you're looking for, this is one we suggest, and this would be in second place, et cetera. I know that borrowing money is a much more important decision, of course, than what hotel you're going to stay at. But it doesn't seem like that we're even that far away from AI being able to do that consult. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a level of trust that people, or a level of craving for connection that people have innately. And to the point, I'll consult all day what toothbrush I should use, if I'm going, if it's something inconsequential. But unless the hotel stay is costing me $1 million, I'll probably want a second layer of validation. And generally, people are going to trust the human experience more so than the AI rendering, right? Especially today. In the future, maybe that will change completely. I tend to think that for the same reason that you could use Chat as a therapist today, right? You could bounce your ideas and fears and everything, and it'll probably give you good advice based off of that. It's not quite the same as talking to somebody through your problems or talking to a close one, having that deeper relationship. So I still think there's that craving of connection that will be there, but I could be wrong about that. And I tend to be a little bit of an AI cynic in that regard anyway. So maybe I'm not the right person to ask.
No, I agree with that, what you just said. I've actually been thinking about it a lot through the context of my business model with Leadership 360. And maybe I'm being naive, and I hope I'm not. But I'm like, gosh, I feel like Leadership 360 as a coaching program and the retreats that we do is somewhat insulated in the sense that, yeah, you could get the information, but that's an entirely different experience than actually being in a cohort of 12 people, being on retreat, being off the grid, being able to explore what it is that you're wanting to work on and get creative and have clarity. I mean, I think people are going to crave those kinds of environments even more in the future where there can be that collaborative experience. What are your thoughts on that, though? I'd be curious.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I mean, coaching is a funny thing because, it's not necessarily information that's hidden, right? I don't think coaches are giving you the secret formula of anything, but it's the accountability and it's the person being there to get you to the next step. And so it's the same thing in the loan world. Like you could seek out this information, you could do it yourself, but at the end of the day, you want somebody that's going to hold you accountable and basically guide you to where you need to go. And I think that's something that is much harder to replace than maybe the technologists tend to assume.
So I'm presuming here then your feeling is, at least in the near term, that the loan originator of the future needs to have AI as its executive assistant, if for nothing else, as an additive support to everything that person does, and also being able to offload some of the remedial tasks to artificial intelligence. So if that is in fact what you're saying, what are some ways that you could see originators using AI effectively right now to help them in their business?
I think number one should probably be cutting costs wherever you can. The one thing that I do think AI is going to drive the industry towards is higher volume and lower compensation, just because it's gonna equalize the playing field a lot, and it's gonna tend to concentrate to the higher producers. That's just my theory, but I think you should consider looking at ways that you can leverage AI to reduce your costs and make your operations as efficient as possible. Because I think that the success story of the future is going to be a high volume, low comp per loan sort of model, just because of the way that technology tends to operate. And we've seen this in across multiple different industries, music, movies. I mean, you name it. When technology tends to come in, the marginal profit tends to go down as well. So just one thing to look at. So with that said, I mean, look at the places where either you have operations or you have inefficiencies that you can use AI to improve. So does your appraisal process, is there room to improve your appraisal process and the number of people that are touching that appraisal or reviewing that file? How about on the pre-approval side? How about on the closing side? I also think that the flip side of that is revenue driving, and a lot of people are focused on AI in operations, but probably where you might want to start considering using AI the most is on the marketing and sales side. How can I improve my approach to an agent? How can I be that much more personable and that much more desirable and add that much more value to this specific individual by using AI? So one example of a change we made that we saw, have tremendous outsized results was we used to market to a lot of listing agents, just kind of a blanket. Hey, your listing may qualify for X, Y, or Z because of some general information. So that we had some census tract based programs, and we kind of do a blanket approach throughout the cities that had those census tracts. We wouldn't actually get specific. We'd get very lukewarm responses. Like nobody wants a maybe, if so, we changed it. So we got really detailed and we found these specific homes that would fit those guidelines perfectly. And then we changed our pitch and said, hey, your home qualifies. Talk to us today about how you can market this. Right. And so that change by actually emailing and reaching out to probably, 10 times 1/10 the amount of people that we were previously, we got 10 times the number of responses because people actually wanted to engage with us. So how do you take that and make it with every pitch you have by using AI? How do you make it so that when you're approaching a realtor, you know everything about them, you know what they're into, you know what their values are, you know where they sell, you know what I mean? How are you supercharging your sales process to become that much better at converting, and not just looking at the costs, which I think are still important, but looking at the future of how to sell better?
Yeah. So when you say that it helped you 10x the results associated with this approach, what did you use AI specifically to do to 10x the approach? I didn't quite catch that part.
So in that example, that was not necessarily AI related. It was more so applying more intelligence to our marketing solution. So I guess the next level of that would be not only finding the right listings, but then pairing it up with the realtor's personality and having AI do a scrub of, hey, what are they into? What do they generally sell to? How do we make this? How do we make our email match what they're likely going to respond to?
Yes. Okay. So that's kind of what Scott DiGregorio talked about when we were on retreat together a couple of months ago, or a month ago, I guess it was, which was, as I recall, and fill in the blanks if I miss anything, but essentially, like if you're targeting 20 realtors, you could use AI to first learn about you and go through your social media page and really understand like what your hobbies and interests and all of those things are. And you could actually build it out and share even more. This is the type of personality that I think I get along best with. This is the type of agent whose production would be worth me pursuing, et cetera. And then what you can do is have that same artificial intelligence bot go through the list of the 20 agents that you're targeting their social media pages and come back to you with a consolidated and organized list of here's your, in order of 1 through 20, here's the ones you should pursue and why, and here are the common denominators that you may want to consider, and here's maybe an outreach initial email that you might want to use, et cetera. Is that what your recollection of the conversation with Scott was?
Absolutely, yeah. And he was going through the Facebook posts and finding things they had in common with, hey, we both have, an interest in dogs or soccer or softball, whatever the case might be, and then finding those connection points to be more genuine with how you're approaching them as well.
So try this one on for size. Hopefully this is one you haven't thought of and that you can swipe and adapt, and that goes for listening. So last week I was in Vegas at Mastermind, where I was speaking, and at our booth, one of our Loan Atlas subscribers by the name of Daryl Flynn came up to me, and he said, "Hey, I want to show you something cool that I created." So he built in chat. He built it's called a bot, right? When you have like the thing on the left hand side, the menu. Am I using the right terminology?
I think the official one is custom GPT or yeah.
Yes. So he built a custom GPT where he taught it, first of all, he's a mortgage professional, just give him the general background. Okay. Then I don't know if he uploaded or gave it some DISC assessment content, or if it just already knew, because DISC assessment content's already out there in the public domain. And what he does now is, when he's done with his consult, his dreams and goals call with the client, he takes the transcript from that, he gives it to the custom GPT and says, decipher for me what this person's likely personality assessment is according to DISC, and craft an email for me that I can send to them, thanking them for our time together, that will speak to their natural personality style and what they will like. That's pretty slick. And it's like, it's already built. Like, he sent it to me. It's like, it doesn't take anything other than just, ordering the Zoom session and then copying the transcript in, and it automatically says, here's your email, and here are some suggestions of connection points. This person's clearly detail oriented based upon this question and that question. You might want to put together an analysis comparing, contrasting 3 different loan programs, or this person is clearly an extrovert, and a personal handwritten note card would really speak their language. I mean, pretty sweet idea, right?
That's awesome. I'm probably going to swipe that this afternoon.
Good. Then I'll text you the custom GPT, because he sent it to me and he said I could share it with anybody I wanted to. So I'll text it to you, and you can take a look at it. And if you decide to build your own, fine. If not, swipe and adapt it.
Yeah, I definitely will. We do have a custom GPT kind of in that thread where we're taking transcripts from calls every single day, and we're giving feedback to our sales team. So the business development folks and the client advisor folks. So we basically run them through, like, hey, which value props did you hit on? Which ones didn't you hit on? And we it's a little bit of like that competitiveness, who can get the best score, right? So it gives them a score based on all these different categories, and saying, hey, you built great rapport, but you didn't set a next step or a clear follow-up. So basically using some of our general sales coaching advice, but giving them like immediate feedback from how the call went. And you can see that people start, gamifying their calls to make sure, like, you can see in the transcript, like, if they forgot to talk about value props at the end, they'll make sure, like, oh, and by the way, just so you know, JVM has, 1,500 5-star reviews, and we do this and that. And it's kind of been nice to see that feedback in real time. So that's one use of custom GPT that we've really been loving.
So the custom GPT is providing that feedback while they're still on the call?
It's after the call. So right after the call, the transcript goes into ChatGPT, and then emails out the summary to the rep.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a perfect example of how to use AI to help enhance training, right? And sales capabilities. I'm sure there's so many other ideas. You got any other ones that come to mind?
Well, one that we have been so back to our outreach and kind of sales approach of doing a lot of custom marketing material. So we're doing, probably about 200 flyers, custom made flyers every single week. Our goal is to get to 500 by the end of the month. So that's a lot of, volume to get through. So we've actually built a an automation engine, and a lot of it leverages AI. So basically, I'm grabbing pricing every single day for the scenarios that we're going to be building. And then based on the listing information, the price point, whatever, all of those fields auto calculate. So it's going to get me monthly payments, property taxes based on the location, insurance, mortgage insurance. Basically, everything's going to autofill and auto populate. Because the process previously was to send it to a virtual assistant who would manually punch everything in, code it all, and send it back. So it was a huge time waste. And now it's immediately calculated and sent back to our flyer team. So right there, that probably gave us a lot more headroom to turn those out.
That's fascinating. That's super cool. As we wind down, I want to go into the personal realm just a little bit with you. What are some of the things that you're working on personally outside of business that you think are noteworthy, and as a 31-year-old man, you're striving to fulfill and to display excellence at in your personal life?
Good question. I think probably top of the list is being a good husband and a good father. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, Charlotte, and she's my world. And I'll say that one very pleasant surprise about being part of the L360 family was how much we focused on personal development and personal improvement. And a lot of the things I'm learning have really been contributing to that. So we talked about this a little bit in our recent retreat too. One thing that I've been trying to get better at is about being vocal with needs, feelings, whatever, and not withdrawing. And so I've actually feel like I've been making pretty good steps in that direction, and that's been helpful with having better communication with my wife, and especially now that Charlotte's getting older and having more toddler tendencies, right? The parenting gets trickier. How much discipline, how much empathy, how do we handle those situations? And so it's come at a really good time where I've been personally working on improving that those levels of communication. The other thing, and this is maybe kind of cheating because it's somewhat business related, but is removing the upper limits of feeling so constrained or not thinking big enough. I think part of my story is I moved here as a very young child from Romania. So my family, both my parents, grew up in Romania under communism, had a very austere childhood and food shortages and lived through the revolution. Actually, my older brother was born in Germany because at the time my parents were refugees in Germany, fleeing Romania from some of the political instability at the time. So that mindset is very scarcity based, right? That's kind of how I grew up, and frankly, it worked for a really long time, right? Having that scarcity mindset got us to where we are, and helped my parents secure a very solid upper middle class life for me and my brothers, and I'm extremely thankful for that. But that sort of scarcity and fear of taking big steps or big risks can be really limiting. So I think that's the other side of what I've been working on through, or personally working through, is like being comfortable with thinking bigger and trying to scale things and shoot for the moon, even if obviously you're not going to hit it every time. But I tend to be the cost cutting and focus on the pennies guy when now I'm trying to reframe my mindset to be on okay, how do I grab a bigger slice of the pie? How do we focus on the abundance and reaching for the stars more often than focusing on the pennies? So those are kind of the two things I'd say right now on the personal side I've been slowly working through.
Kind of see them as both the same thing. I mean, both of the scenarios, right? I mean, both of them are, in one hand, it's like using your voice and asking for what you want, and being willing to bravely, daring bravely, the Brene Brown, Netflix special that we watched, right? So being willing to bravely communicate in a way that may entail some risk because you don't know what the response is of the other person. And simultaneous to that is being willing to bravely say, no, I believe in something bigger here. And although my natural tendency is to play it safe and be conservative, especially when it comes to the financial part of it, I'm going to trust that what I put my mind to will be successful and that I can seize opportunities when they're in front of me and my intuition tells me that they're there. I mean, they both require that internal bravery. And I guess the other thing that I would want to say is that, it's interesting. I mean, I think I told you this. I don't remember if I did or not, but I did. I think I told you this last month when I saw you. But I remember when I first interviewed you. You had shared with me that one of the things that was like a blind spot of yours or kind of a watch out was that you could tend to be awfully opinionated and closed-minded towards others' points of view. And you had vulnerably said, sometimes I'm kind of a know-it-all. Do you remember saying some version of that to me?
That sounds true.
I find you to be any of that. Like, I mean, it's like, so I want to applaud you and say that, like, I was always like in the back of my mind waiting for it for the last year of getting to know you. And I just didn't see it at all. Like, I mean, I just saw a guy who was completely open and curious and expansive and grew a lot in those 12 months. And I'm happy for you. I'm happy for your daughter. I'm happy for your wife. Man, I like I told you, what, I don't know when it was, 6 weeks ago or something like that, 8 weeks ago, I told you, I said, I'm really inspired by you, man. I mean, I'm jealous that I wish I was 31 years old and had as much going on for me as you have going on for you. You have a bright future ahead of you, my friend. It's a pleasure to be in some ways a part of it. And I'm here to support you in any way I can. And thank you so much for a beautiful conversation and bringing so much value to this show, this episode of the 360 Experience podcast.
Thanks so much, Tim. I really appreciate that.
You're very welcome. And to everybody that tuned in to listen, thank you very much. I know that you got a lot of value from Andrei. He did a wonderful job, and we'll look forward to bringing you another episode in a couple of weeks. Have a productive week, everyone. Bye-bye.